out. Yeah. Look at that. How's that for the first fish of the day? Alright guys, so we're here with the Big Fish 103. And I want to make a really good review on this kayak because even a year later after this kayak's been out, and it's been almost a year since I've owned this. I got this last April from Austin Canoe and Kayak in Houston. One of the first ones that hit the lot, I went and got it. So even a year later, I haven't found any good reviews on YouTube that go into all the little details, the nitty-gritty stuff, the pros and the cons of it. Because every kayak has cons and every kayak has their issues. So you won't know unless someone talks about it or you get it yourself and then you find out these issues. And because I was one of the first owners, you know, I didn't have anywhere to look. Now there is a couple groups on Facebook. They've been really helpful, especially with putting on like the landing gear and stuff, because I removed the rod holders to put the landing gear on there, the Boondocks landing gear. But there's still nothing on YouTube. Nothing to find, you know, all the details about this kayak, all the problems with it. So I'm going to go into that. Now, these problems, nothing too major. Nothing to keep you from like buying it, but it may require some modification. So any problem I came across, I found a solution for. And I'm hoping that me telling you how I found that solution may help someone else out there that's having these problems fix it. So they'll enjoy their kayak, enjoy their watercraft a little bit more. So going over this thing, it's 10.5 foot long, 400 pound weight capacity. It's a trimaran hull. Very stable, super stable kayak. I would even say it's more stable than most Hobies. Because there is no 10.5 foot kayak that is this stable. It is unmatched for a kayak this length. You only see stability like this out of something, you know, around the 14 foot length. So I'm gonna stand, put both feet on one side. Oh, almost lost my phone. And nothing. Like, you're not gonna flip this thing. My toes are touching the side walls. You can pee off the side. So this thing is super stable. Super stable kayak. Absolutely crazy how stable this thing is. I have no worries of falling in when I stand up in this thing. Absolutely no worries at all when I stand up. So, just going over through the basics. You got the beaver tail rudder in the back. You got 2 track mounts on the back. Now these track mounts are not super sturdy. I wouldn't put a ton of weight on them. You got a pretty decent sized tank well. The seat, I really like the seat. It's pretty comfortable. And this big open deck. I really like this open deck because I fly fish. And I don't fly fish all the time, but when I do fly fish, I really like that I can lift the seat. And I can lift it up like this, and now you have all this open room to drop your line, and you can stand back here. There we go. Also, when you push pull this kayak, if you're in really shallow water and you don't plan on sitting down, this is really good to lean against while you're push pulling, and then you can also stand back a little bit further to make it easier to turn the kayak while you're push pulling, just like a paddleboard. So this thing has a lot of fun. It's been so much fun with this kayak over the last year, and I don't plan on getting rid of it anytime soon. But I do want to go over some of the cons I've had with it. I do want to say the 8-ball steering is really nice. I like this, I really do. My 8-ball is completely worn out. This is the Railblaze camera mount, so I use it to hold my GoPro a lot. And I normally keep it just like this so I can spin it around whenever I'm out there fishing. So one of the first problems I ran into with this was I broke my rudder cable. But it was all my fault. I over tightened it. And that's one thing you need to be wary of with any kayak. Don't over tighten your rudder cables. They will break. I don't care if it's a Hobie, I don't care what it is. You'll break your cables if you over tighten them. Now, with this open deck, you have so much room to do stuff. And even if you don't lift the seat up, you can slide a lot of stuff under the seat. I normally keep my anchor under there, maybe keep some snacks and stuff like that under the seat. Hell, right now I just found a voodoo shrimp. So, to drop the rudder, you have this little ball right here. Pull it, rudder drops down. Pull it back up, and you can lock it in place. Really simple setup. No issues with that whatsoever. Now the pedal drive, it's not the most intuitive up and down system. So it has this knob that you have to screw and unscrew to be able to lift the drive in and out of the water. That to me can sometimes be annoying because you're sitting there twisting it. Your fingers are cold, stuff like that. It can become an issue. And these plastic covers for these nuts are not very well. The very first day, the transducer mount knob broke as I was tightening it. Just barely twisting it, the plastic broke. So this plastic eventually probably will break on all these, and I'm okay with that because there'll still be a nut under it you can always twist. So this little button right here, you can click to make sure that your rudder is in the right position to be able to lift this in and out of the water. I really like that. It's really quick and easy when you're on the water. You don't have to sit there and fiddle with it to try and get that rudder where you want it. You just push this little button and you know that it's right where you need it. So dropping it back down, you have to twist this to lock it in. Like I said, this takes a second. That's about the most time it takes to launch this thing. And then you just slap this lever down on the right side. And now it's locked. It's in place. Now when you're pedaling this kayak, this has been one of my #1 issues and one of my #1 complaints, is when you first get this, you are going to have to put some thread lock on these crank arms here because they come loose while you're pedaling. And unless you want to carry Allen wrenches with you all the time, which me being a bike rider, I can definitely tell when those pedals wiggle. And I always have Allen wrenches, so it's never been too big of an issue. But if you're someone that doesn't have Allen wrenches, like, you're going to have to go buy tools for your kayak. And I do recommend that, you know, any moving part in your kayak that you have tools for it, because I don't care if it's a car, if it's a bike, or a kayak, any moving part, any mechanical part eventually will wear and tear and break. You're going to have to fix things. Things come loose, things break all the time. You'll have to fix them. Now, track mounts on front. Got my depth finder on the right side, got the camera mount on the left side. This is where the rod storage is. I really like the rod storage in this kayak. Let's go ahead and put the seat back down. Slide that back. So I really like the rod storage in this kayak. Here, I got a rod right here. I can show y'all. Whenever I'm storing this kayak, transporting it, anything like that, most of the time I just slide the rod like this, put the handle up here, and I point the tips backwards. Especially like when I'm bringing the fly rod. I got one right here too. So fly rods are really long, and you don't want to hit the tip on anything because they're a little bit more fragile than your standard rod. So stick in the butt up here, and then I just let the tip stick out the back, and it just sticks out a couple inches out the back end, but I don't have to worry about it. It's all laid down compact. It's not sticking up in the air like an antenna, and I can go under stuff without worrying about it catching. Now, I do want to get into the biggest complaint I've had of this kayak, and that's the rudder system. Not that the rudder's bad by any means. The rudder turns great. Where they put it on this kayak is terrible. Absolutely terrible, and I'm going to show y'all. So on the back here, before I modified this, you can see, even from the side here, that this part sticks out lower than the bottom of the kayak. And I tried to stick washers up here first and lift this up, but it ended up being a little bit rattly and I didn't like that. So what I ended up doing was I cut the bottom off. I just cut it. Cut the bottom off of this mount right here. And probably not recommended, but I've never had any issues with it. It's always worked well for me. But the reason I did that was because there's a lot of people online who end up getting stress fractures right here from this being hitting the ground, like from this right here hitting the ground constantly. So trying to move this kayak was a pain in the butt because the rudder was constantly hitting the ground. And that's what made me spend the money to get the Boondocks landing gear. So these wheels are not cheap. They're $300. And yes, Native makes a slightly cheaper version, but they're still $250, $230. So like, it's not that big of a difference. But these wheels have been a game changer. They make this kayak load up so fast. You can load this in and out of the back of a truck in under 5 minutes. Go ahead and lift her up in there. Now this kayak is hefty. If you are roof racking this kayak, I put it on the top of a Jeep Renegade the very first day with no help alone, and I work out all the time. I'm a fit person. My job is a fitness related job. This thing whooped my butt putting it on the roof of a Jeep Renegade. So if you are going to roof rack this kayak, I highly recommend you get a side loader. A Rhino Rack side loader, and I actually have one. If someone needs one, just hit me up. I'll give it to you cheap. You name the price. I'm not trying to make a bunch of money off of it. Just cover the shipping and stuff and we'll get that out. So this thing has been a blast, but like I said, it has some issues. Number one being that rudder. So the other issue with that, having that rudder there and it dragging the ground all the time, was that it made the front of the kayak hit the ground a lot too. So we're gonna walk to the front. And what I did to counteract that is I put a Kydex keel guard on the bottom here. And that Kydex holds up really well. Haven't had any issues with it. If it gets a little hole or spot in it, I just throw another layer on, heat melt it there, and use a little heat gun and plastic melt it, plastic weld it, whatever you want to call it. It works. You can see the depth finder right there, the transducer mount. I'm not the biggest fan of this transducer mount, but it gets the job done. It catches grass. It does catch grass. That's not too bad though. Now water, when you're going, water hits that pole and then shoots up into the hatch. And that was kind of an issue for me at first. I really did not like that. So what I did was I stuck some foam in there to stop most of that. You can see I got, all kinds of wiring, batteries in here. So you can see there's a little bit of water at the bottom, but that's not much, and that's because I have this foam stuck into there. So I stuck some foam right beside the transducer mount, and that kind of, prevents most of the water from coming in. You probably see my toggle switches, so I do have some lights on here. That's the floor light. And then I also have the red and green lights on the front. Alright, so those are just some $12 lights from Amazon. Now, this is just duct tape. I didn't want to drill through the actual hole of the kayak, so I just taped the wire down. I may need some new tape, getting a little frayed right there. But I did drill a hole in the lid. That's the only place I drilled a hole. And that's so I could put toggle switches so I could turn one or the other off. So I could turn on the port and starboard lights without having to turn on the floor light. And I could cut the floor light out without having to turn the other one off. So I really like having the red and green lights. These magnets, I know they're rusted, but this is actually where I put my light bar. I have a light bar that you just slap on there. Just some magnets, slap it on there. Alright, so I'm rigged up. See the light bar. You want to change the... You can really see the trimaran hole from here. So this is what makes it so stable. And that's one of the best parts about this kayak, is the stability. I just dance around this thing with no problem. The drive on this thing is pretty hefty. So it literally looks like a mini outboard. It's got an aluminum bottom, and you can see where the sand has taken the paint off. And I've actually hit a log at full speed. I've always been worried about what would happen if you hit a log. I hit a log at full speed, and it did bend my plate right here, which was very easy to bend back in place. And the drive, you just take it, drop it in, and I just did that one-handed. And I'm gonna tighten up these 2 bolts. You got a pretty decent size tank well back here. I like to put my crate back here, but you could easily put a cooler. I have a little flip-top cooler that I just use this right here to hold it to the back of my crate, and it tends to do okay. And you probably saw that I plugged those holes with the little foam golf balls, and that's to keep my crate dry. Now my crate, I'll just normally toss a strap over a corner and it's not going anywhere. This crate is actually 2 crates that I cut and then used a heat gun to melt it together. If y'all would like to see how I did that, just let me know. You can do this with any kayak. So any kayak you have, you can make your box fit perfectly in the back. You know, you take advantage of as much room as you need by adding more to it. So now I just keep all the loose items, knife, fish grabber, sunscreen, all my little junk in there. All my tackle stays in the big part, so nothing gets mixed up. Another tip is when I'm driving down the road, I actually like to take the back down just so there isn't, you know, as much wind resistance beating down on this, because it'll be pulling so hard that it'll stretch out the straps. You'll actually have to adjust them back to where they were. So I found this little trick, eliminates a lot of that wind drag.